go. We have unlimited time, but let's say a half hour. It's 9:11 now. What I'll do is I'll ask a few questions. Everyone will get a question each, and then we'll turn it over to you. And if you don't have any questions, I have more. So I'm going to just start with the introductions. First of all, thank you again for coming out tonight on a weeknight. We really appreciate it. And thank you for supporting independent films in a wonderful movie theater. First of all, let me introduce myself. I'm Sarah Vincent. I am not only your neighbor and a longtime patron of Somerville Theatre, but I'm also a regular contributor at WGBH's Morning Edition, and I'm a sub at NECN in the morning on Fridays for Reel Reviews. And I write for Awards Watch, Boston Movie News, In Between Drafts, and my website, sarahgvincentViews.com. And now, the Filmmakers. Jen is a Uruguayan American, and she may not call herself an adventurer, but her life story says otherwise. She has lived in 5 countries besides the US: Argentina, Mexico, Spain, Switzerland, and the United Kingdom. Her consistent home is the movie theater. She landed in New York City, where she worked on Oprah Winfrey's TV miniseries Belief, exploring faith around the world. And while in New York City, she met her husband and collaborator, Matt. She's the writer of the movie. Now for... Absolutely. And now for Matt, who is the director. He hails from Connecticut and got interested in filmmaking when his 6th grade teacher gave students the choice between writing a book report and making a film. Obviously, that's a no-brainer. He then came to the Big Apple to follow his dream, and after graduating from film school, he worked for a Brooklyn documentary production company where he crossed paths with Jen, and they married in April of 2019. You may know his work from this year when Vice President Kamala Harris appeared at the Democratic National Convention. His montage with Beyonce's music over it, he did that. And when the world stopped during 2020, during the pandemic, they chose to move to Portland and make it their adopted home, which is the backdrop of this film. And now, last but not least, Desmin Borges hails from Chicago, lived in Houston during, yes, I'm here for Chicago. Another great city. He lived in Houston during the second half of his childhood and currently lives in New York. He's not just an actor on the silver and big screen, but the theater, and you may be familiar with him from his role in You're the Worst or as Alfonso in Only Murders in the Building. But you should also know, this is the most important part, that he volunteered with Arts in the Armed Forces, a nonprofit where actors performed for and with veterans, which Adam Driver and Joanne Tucker founded before it disbanded in 2023. So now for the questions. I'm gonna start with you. Actually, here's the funny thing. We didn't arrange this beforehand and they're seated in the exact right order. Good job. Well, first of all, thank you so much for joining us tonight in Somerville. So the first question's for you. In a day and age where TikTok and Reddit are warning people about red flags in relationships, how did you manage to create a humanist comedy where people are seriously flawed, especially Walt, but not in a way that would leave the audience hating the protagonist and screaming at Wendy to run?
Can you hear me? Let's see. Do you see it? There we go. There we go. That is a good and tough question. I mean, I think, especially with the character of Walt, I poured a lot of myself into him. And so I guess, whether consciously or subconsciously, he became kind of, I almost think of it as like a very expensive and laborious form of therapy, writing and making this film and the because it was really like exploring those parts of me and kind of what I would like to have other people say to me, maybe. So yeah, I don't know. I think going in, we knew that we definitely did not want to have the sort of typical man-baby type of character, which you see so much of, and we wanted his issues to feel really rooted in reality. We didn't want it to be somebody who was, you know, a massive pain in the ass full of red flags, but who thinks that he's the greatest. You know, Walt is very aware of his shortcomings, and we meet him in kind of a tougher place in his life. But we knew casting would be so important for that role, and we had Desmin on our list from day one, both from his role in You're the Worst, and also we had seen him in a Netflix film called Private Life by Tamara Jenkins, which is a fantastic film if you haven't seen it. And you know, he embodies that hangdog character so very well, but he's also very lovable, both the human and in his performance. And so yeah, it was just kind of going into it knowing that it was straddling a line and wanting it to feel real, wanting Wendy's anger to feel real, wanting it to feel justified, and yeah, and hopefully that came across. And you know, I think we all have those people in our lives, and we are those people at some point or another where, you know, you can tell that you're not fun to be around in the moment. And you hope that people will be forgiving and will understand that it's a phase and give you some slack. And so that's sort of the approach with Walt.
Well, it worked.
Okay, thank God.
Really well. My next question's for Matt. And if we need to move overboard, just let me know, because I don't know if it's going to get difficult.
No, yeah. Whoa, wow.
There we go. Wow, it comes with a cord. Yeah. So, Matt, you have a lot of documentary filmmaking experience. What did you find was an easy transition in your visual style from making documentaries to narrative films? And what did you have to throw away and sort of say, I can't use this anymore? Or were you able to keep it all?
Okay, let's answer the first part. By the way, this theater's huge. It's probably way too big for a movie.
Or perfect, and what you deserve.
Yeah, so I guess for the documentary background, it was kind of about dragging in everything that I acquired and leaning into those qualities. With Nathan, the cinematographer, he's also from documentary. It really wasn't about being like, hey, Terminator 2 is so good, let's try to do, it was like, let's be us and be very straightforward with the camera. I knew that we had 18 days to shoot. So again, with documentary, you don't have the luxury of just hanging around and, you know, waiting for things to materialize. And yeah, I think that's a great quality, to just be able to throw things away and not be too precious. And I love stuff that's a little rough around the edges, and I was there to serve this guy performance, Kelly's, all the actors' performances, Jen's great script. I was there to just sort of oversee it and check in on the tone and not really meddle too much. It sounds like I didn't do anything, but yeah. To give you an abbreviated answer, I like to. I'm an editor also, so I like to be truncated with my answers. What was the second one?
The second one was, what did you find didn't help you with your experience, and that you had to kind of reinvent for, oh, this is fiction, I've got to do this a little differently?
Yeah. I mean, you can't just sit there quietly. I think with documentary, you can just sort of watch, because you should be observant, and you're sort of capturing real humans. And I think if I were, if I was quiet between every take, that would be strange, right? Or would that be cool? I don't know.
I like to talk. I like to keep my connections. So I appreciate the non-silent version of Matt.
So there's that. There's being a little more articulate, and you're talking with every facet, every department, trying to communicate with and express a vision and make sure that people are okay and happy and comfortable. I really just wanted to make like a very comfortable environment on set. Because I've been in a lot of workplaces where it's not comfortable, and you are not going to be creative if it's toxic and people are making you feel uncomfortable. So, anyway, take that to work tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, I'll say this. What I've heard from some filmmakers, and just some people who work on sets, that you can sort of feel when the movie's tense because it doesn't quite work, and then you can feel when the movie, like, it worked, and it feels like it works. So I think you succeeded. I mean, obviously I wasn't there, but but looks like you succeeded. So, Desmin, I've got a couple of questions for you. How much of you is in Walt, or did you have to really reach to find it?
I think there's always bits of you in sort of everything you do. I mean, you are who you are, and you bring your experience and your love and your angst and your own anxieties to sort of every project that you bring in, or that you get the opportunity to try and flush out and bring to life. I think particularly in this one, I was exceptionally lucky. I got 6 weeks to prepare before we started filming. That included weekly lovely Zoom sessions with these folks as we would talk through certain scenes and really try and get a grasp on how we wanted to attack them so that we could utilize our time to the best of our ability while we were there. It allowed me to really explore a physical life that I was very interested in Walt. It's subtle, but I felt like, the first time that I had read the script, I was envisioning someone who wanted to sort of walk through life and be sort of unseen by other people and mostly by him, not, by himself. He didn't even want to see himself. So I really wanted to truncate myself and shrink in as much as possible, which allowed for some other really short, static sort of movements to sort of operate from there, which was really nice. And then by the end, he just opens up a little bit more and is more aware of himself and open to everyone around him, right? And then I also got an extreme luxury with Matt. I said one day, I was like, I really like to work with music in the background. Is there anything you two are jamming on while you're preparing this, or when you were writing it, or while we're going through scene by scene? And Matt was like, oh yeah, I got this whole Spotify list, and he sent it over to me, and I listened to that for the next 6 weeks plus the 3 weeks after that we were shooting. I would wake up and listen to it. I would listen to it while I worked. In between setups, I would put different songs on from there that I felt like really helped either get me into the scene or take me out of the scene, because then I wanted to fight hard to get into it. So there was a bit of that, but I feel like overall I got an extreme luxury that I don't always get, which is a great amount of time to help develop the isms that I thought Walt should have.
My second question for you, now this is the film geek in me, because I never get this opportunity to ask the question. Sometimes I'm watching a film, and there's a character, and the character clearly is of a certain background. They're from a certain city, they're of a certain race, they're of a certain gender, and that is what the character is. And sometimes that identity is aligned with the identity of the actor. In this film, and this is not a negative or a positive, it's just, when I watched this film, I didn't think at all about, other than Walt was a city guy. You're Puerto Rican. Did you think of Walt as a Puerto Rican character, even though when he was written, he wasn't intended to be a Puerto Rican character? Are we supposed to pick up that he's a Puerto Rican character, or is it sort of irrelevant? I know it's different for every role, but is it, when you were approaching it, were you thinking of him so kind of subconsciously, oh, he's from New York, and he's Puerto Rican, and he's this, and he's that? Or were you like, nope, his history is totally different? Like, how much of that were you able to bring into the role?
Well, Jen and I spoke about this, because if you look at us, obviously, depending on the light, how many drinks you might have had, what part of the country or Caribbean you might be in, you might look at us and be like, hey, they're X, or hey, they're Y, or they look kind of like the other people that I'm around. Yet you put us in a completely different setting and you're like, oh no, he's not brown, he's obviously Italian or Jewish or Hungarian or Greek. Like, that's a luxury in my life that I can sort of be all of those things or none of those things at the time. But I think one of the things that Jen and I spoke about very early on is something that's very near and dear to us, is that stories that have brown people as leads don't have to like hit the nail on the head or lend a hand too much, that they have to do brown people stuff in order for you to identify them as brown and live in a, you know, society that just happens to have a brown guy story that we're following. Like, it's just happenstance that I happen to be Puerto Rican, Italian, and Greek, and that she's from Uruguay, right? Like, and this is like the best case scenario for both of us, that you're watching those that are, you know, primarily voiceless, don't have as many seats at the table as everyone else, yet we're the ones who are sort of like running the show on this, and it doesn't happen to be a brown piece of anything. It's a beautiful marriage of people being flawed, people having issues, and oh yeah, he's also Puerto Rican, you know, which is more of what I want to see happen. You know, I think there's always this sort of, you know, thing that happens throughout everything now, you know, like you see a commercial and it's like, oh, well, of course, they got the, you know, white guy with the red hair to be the bad guy in this one. Like, why didn't they give that to the brown guy? And it's like, well, because for years we've only been giving the bad guy to the brown guy, and there's this sort of fight that's happening with all of us. And it's just nice to have something, you know, funny, hopeful, uplifting, that isn't necessarily about race, just about the human at the core.
Thank you. So right now, we're going to turn to you. It is 9:28, if you're wondering. It's still a weeknight. And if you feel comfortable, go ahead, raise your hand if you have a question, and if we can't hear you, we'll figure out how to work that out. Go ahead.
Wow. Well, first of all, thank you for the Kamala Harris piece. It blew me away and brought tears to my eyes. It was incredible. So thank you for that. But this film is absolutely charming. I absolutely loved it, and I'm curious about the comedy and how the development of the comedy and the comedic moments came about from the page to the set, and was there any improv, and what kind of happy accidents happened along the way that showed up on screen tonight that weren't expected?
I'll speak to the page, and then you can
Sure.
speak about on set. I mean, Matt and I are always drawn to what we call humanist comedies, where, you know, it's set in the real world, it's real people, but it is the sort of the comedy of human foibles, and we knew going into it that we wanted this to be funny, even though it was dealing with some heavier issues, and I think that was something that we really attempted, and that I attempted on the page as well, was that anytime it was veering into sentimentality, kind of like pop it with something, and so we kind of took that approach into production, and then, I mean, you can speak to sort of the improv and happy accidents. There were many.
Yeah, I mean, my favorite happy accident on the shoot was Des and Steve in the car he's about to break into Buffy's house, and he's like, all right, I'm going, and the door pops open and there's a bush there. And that was just the spur of the moment. We didn't know there was a bush, we didn't mean for there to be a bush there. And it's a great moment, and so you accept those little golden accidents and try not to, I guess I'm not trying to control too much, you know, like putting like the vice grip on everything, because again, Des is the script was brilliant by Jen, but then it was about sort of sprinkling in the little one-liners or the funny interactions that weasel their way into the film. I do think I think it helps just loosen up a film a little bit. But then you can crank that too much and you're like, Jesus, they're just hanging out. Like Judd Apatow movies, you're just like, they're just having a great time. And it's 4 hours long. Did that answer all of you? All right. Sound like you enjoyed the Kamala piece a little more than me.
You're both great.
Yeah, just joking. Michael, sorry.
Hello, Matthew. So, like in a movie like this, it's very like grounded, but I couldn't help but notice there was a lot of artistic shots kind of like interwoven throughout the piece. Like you have the very like, in the beginning when she's looking at the frame of the dog, like that very like, I don't want to say like Wes Anderson, but like that perfect symmetry like on the thing. And then other times you had like camera shake with like anxiety levels building up, and then other points you had, like when they're on the beach and it's kind of like blurry in the background and you kind of like focus in and out. How do you, like, did you have like a favorite style of shot that you'd like to weave into the movie? Or I guess like how do you choose like trying to find a balance between something that's, you're trying to keep this very like human and realistic, but also weave something like very creative shots in at the same time? So I guess that's two questions.
Good question. Long question.
Very long, very long.
I think I was not about being pretty with the movie, and I think for the most part, once the dog gets stolen, it's all handheld camera. So I don't know if I think subliminally that helps with the urgency. Like when Wendy's there, we're sort of on a tripod, and then once the dog gets stolen, it's a little more frantic. But like, yeah, I mean, man, I love beautiful looking movies, but I didn't set out with this one. I just knew Nathan, the cinematographer, has a great eye. If we can just sort of establish a simple approach, like, we'll get those little, like some of my favorite images are the dogs just like moseying around Portland. And those are not planned fully. And the Wendy shot with the portrait, that was just sort of, good timing. Funny you brought up Wes Anderson though, because when we were doing that, I was like, this is a little too Wes Anderson-y, boxy and weird. Anyways, good eye. Yes.
One thing that I did want to point out, I don't know, I think I told this to you very early on, Matt, but when I was doing my due diligence when I first got the script before we had met, I went and I checked out Matt's website because I wanted to get like a greater understanding of his own personal aesthetic, and I happened to watch your short, and like I snorted laughing at one moment while I was taking a drink of water because he just sat in this one moment and frame that didn't move. And most people would have cut out of it about 12 seconds ago, and Matt did not. And I laughed 3 more times, and I counted 15 seconds. And I said, that's some dope shit. I know he's gonna bring that to this movie. I wanna be a part of that. And you see it all over the place. Like, it's brilliant how you just stay in some shots and make people think, oh, this is the end of it. No, wait. And then the laugh comes, and the heartier of the laugh comes at the end once you get to like really live in it and push the border on like a grounded ridiculousness, I would say, of the moment.
Thank you. Or it brings about an elongated silence. Thank you, though. Yeah. Cool.
You touched on so many beautiful things during the movie. My favorite might have been the conversation that Marianne has with the 2 leads before they even start to interact, where she's talking to a towel and he's hacking away at a beautiful time bush. Also, excellent pun work, by the way. That was wonderful. Who is Marianne? How did she come into your story? Does she exist in your life? And was the beach important to Marianne's character, or your interaction with Marianne in your life as she exists?
So Marianne is loosely based on our actual backyard neighbor, and that is our backyard in the film, and that is our backyard neighbor's porch. And yeah, we got to know her kind of slowly, and she's just somebody who, it was like every conversation was another sort of peel of the onion that was so fascinating. And she does in fact make miniatures, and she made the little outhouse for the film. So we kind of put little bits and pieces of her personality into that character. But I think, you know, in general, it was just, we wanted somebody who was kind of like, had gone through the shit and was on the other side for Walt to have those interactions with. And in terms of the beach, there's no correlation to the real life, quote unquote, Marianne, but you know, that again was just supposed to be somebody who is at that sort of zero fucks stage and is just doing what they want. And initially I had written it as Marianne frolics on the beach, and after we cast Barbara Rosenblatt, who's fantastic, you know, she was like, I'm 72, you've put me in a winter wetsuit in April in Maine, I'm not frolicking. But she had told us in one of our first conversations, she referred to herself as the last Jewish scat queen of New York. And so we were like, okay, I think we're gonna have to try and work that into the character. So she, instead of frolicking, she scatted into the ocean. But yeah, she's fantastic, and yes, loosely based on a real person. So thank you.
Any other questions?
I guess I got one more. Sorry, keeping people. So it seems like, I guess in your opinion, there's almost like two major points, right? Like he gets the dog back, but obviously what's important is like him kind of like coming to terms in his relationship. And I really haven't seen like a movie where it's like you get kind of, what you think is supposed to be the big cathartic point in the movie ends up actually like building up to the true kind of like ending of the movie. I mean, did that just kind of happen naturally? Was that like intentional? And I mean, I guess in some ways it probably is, right? But did you decide? Did you say like, oh, like we're really gonna make sure that like we're gonna focus on that, and this is more of a, maybe not a red herring, but like a smaller piece of the overarching plot?
Yeah, I mean, you can speak to this too, but you know, going into the script, we knew that, well, we always knew that he would get the dog back.
Yeah.
I'm somebody where I cannot stand when they hurt or kill a dog in a movie. I was never gonna let that happen. But you know, it was never, it's like, you know, that's the device, I guess, but it was never about the dog theft and getting the dog back. It was much more about Walt's journey. And so, so yes, you know, once he gets the dog back, while that is kind of obviously a big moment for him, there's still so much to unpack, and it's sort of like it's like, oh, thank God, I've accomplished this thing, I've like finished my hero's journey, and I've been successful, and then reality sort of slaps him in the face, and it's like, you've been on this journey, but Wendy doesn't know that, and what she knows is A, that you've lied, and B, the person that she left town 3 days ago, and the person who was in the rut. And so we couldn't just tie it up there and be like, cool, dog's back, and peace out. You know, it was like, we had to kind of slap him in the face with reality again, and give him that additional moment of realizing that, yeah, you know, he's gonna have to make some changes in his life if he wants to get what he wants, basically. And we also knew we didn't want to tie everything up with a ribbon, and we weren't gonna have, you know, the dog come out with the engagement ring on his collar or something, because we wanted it to feel real, but to just kind of end on a hopeful moment and you know, give him a little bit of hope. I wanted to just sort of treat him kindly in the end.
Yes.
How did you come up with Brent?
Brent?
Yeah.
He's loosely inspired by a guy I met in Nashville. Real quick, I know it's late. I stayed at an Airbnb and with a friend, and I woke up at 2 a.m. covered in bed bugs. And the guy who owned the place came, and he was like, "Shit, man, sorry. I'll take you to a hotel." And on the car ride there, he told me I make, amateur porn. In my mind, I was like, in the Airbnb that we were just in? So anyways, that was the sort of kernel for him, but a lot of Brent came from Jen's noggin and imagination. So yeah, it was just kind of fleshing that out. And, yeah.
And then, again, just sort of like pulling in little pieces of people that we were meeting in Maine. And Peaks Island is a very special place. If anybody's been there, it's an island off of Portland. And I think they have maybe 700 year-round residents, and then it balloons to about 10,000 in the summer. And so, yeah, it's just, the kind of person who chooses to live out there year-round. It's a specific type. That said, we have not met anybody on Peaks who has any sort of porn collective, nor any dog theft ring. So just want to make sure to, not sully the good name of the people of Peaks Island. But yeah, again, it's just sort of like bits and pieces of real life and imagination kind of weaving them together.
I saw a question over there, yes.
Simple question. What's next for you folks?
You take it.
That's my aunt, by the way. She's already seen the movie like 3 times. I wish I had a cool answer for you. We have ideas that are kind of in the oven still. I have a feature idea called Bruised Banana. That's all I'll say about it. It's a good title. Jen? Do you want to go, Des?
I'm researching bruises and bananas. So many varieties. So many bruises. So hopefully we'll come out on the other side of that.
Any?
Yeah, working on a couple screenplays. But.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes.
How hard was it to pass the dog or get it to do the things you wanted it to do?
Mr. Tibbs.
Casting the dog was very important because we didn't want to slow up the caboose, and everyone tells you don't make a movie with a dog. And so, we just worked with the trainer and really sort of minimized all the interactions, and obviously tried to give Mr. Tibbs, Tony, a vibe and a personality, but not overdo it, not do like the weird dog cutaways that they do in like Disney movies and stuff. No shame on Disney movies. Shade, not shame. Shame. Help me.
You're doing fine.
All right.
Are there any other questions? I'm going to close with one last question because you mentioned Disney. Walt and Wendy, is there a Disney inspiration with the names? What's going on? It's just an accident. Maybe. Think about it. So thank you again so much for coming. You have homework, however, and this is the homework that you have. If you wanna, so just like you're gonna vote in November, hopefully, no judgment, except you should. You can support independent films in addition to coming to independent theaters and coming and seeing independent films in person. This movie comes out on October 25th. So, even though we all know we're above Rotten Tomatoes sometimes, it's still an important tool that helps get the message out there. And there might be someone who isn't into independent films who goes over to Rotten Tomatoes and they're like, what do we think about this film? So, it doesn't have to be long. Log on and please put down your opinion because the popcorn meter matters. And so hit that tomato, make it fresh, and put in a review. And when's the next stop for the tour? There's one more stop, right?
Village East in Manhattan.
Yes.
Going back to the Apple.
So if you know anyone in New York City, tell them that this film is coming there. What day?
October 28th. Monday.
So
Another good night to see a movie.
So we all probably know a couple of people in New York City. Send them a text, say, hey, I know what you're doing on October 28th. And let them know that it's coming there. And then on October 25th, your homework is to say, hey, it's coming out streaming. You don't have to go anywhere. This movie's great, and tell them about it. So these are the ways that you can support independent film and independent filmmakers and the actors who work with there. And then when you vote with your voice and your dollars, they'll make more of these movies. So we're the only people who can make that happen. So thank you again so much for coming out, and I hope you have a great night.